Hey everyone, it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to talk about the books that I've read in April and May. I'm late filming this video and I'm gonna be late posting it, but am I sorry? No. The weather is just nice and I want to touch grass more, so I basically live my life and filming sometimes doesn't fit it. Without any additional wordings, let's just get into this video. I have a lot of interesting things to talk about, including complete and total flops. The first book that I'm going to talk about is The Good Daughter by Karin Slaughter. I vlogged reading this book, so if you've seen my previous video, you know that I really enjoyed it. This is my first Karin Slaughter. Yes, I'm late to the hype. I know that a lot of people enjoy her books. I watched the TV show Pieces of Her first and then decided that I want to read her books. Sometimes adaptations do a good job at making people want to read the original, so that's that. The Good Daughter is a very interesting mystery/thriller. It's about the two sisters that survived a family tragedy. Their father was a notorious person in their small town. He was a lawyer and he took on very questionable cases. He protected people with the worst reputations, people that were accused of murdering or raping someone in town. So he was infamous, and because of that reputation that he got, his family suffered as well. Not only they were pariahs, their house was attacked and burned, so they had to move. This was not the only tragedy that befell their family. After they moved to a new house, they were attacked by two strangers who killed their mother and raped one of the sisters, and the other one was harshly beaten. So both sisters, Sam and Charlie, came out of that situation very much wounded in different ways. The story follows two timelines and it follows both sisters. Sam left the town a few years later to become a lawyer in a new city where no one knew who she is. She blames her father for what happened and she mostly stopped talking to her family. Charlie continued to live in their small town and she kept a good relationship with her father. She also became a lawyer and started working with her father, but on different cases. They are reunited when Charlie becomes a witness of a shooting in the local high school and offers to represent the shooter in the court because it turns out to be a teenage girl who she suspects has some development issues. This book perfectly encapsulates what I think thrillers and mysteries should be like. It's not just a flick with a shocking reveal at the end, not that those do not have the right to exist, it's just I prefer the ones that leave me with something to think about. This book explores the gray areas of morality and how bendable morality actually is without shaking its finger at it. As the priorities of the characters change, what's moral and immoral changes as well as they investigate this difficult case that parallels a lot of the things that happened to them in their past. The characters were very dynamic. It managed to be plot-driven and character-driven at the same time, which is just the perfect spot. I loved all the intricacies of the plots. I loved how the secrets were revealed. I think it was very well balanced, and we didn't necessarily get a shock ending at the end, which are becoming very boring at this point. Instead, I got the ending that was founded on the 75% of the book that I've read, and that was very satisfying, obviously. I enjoyed this. I know that there is a second book and I think it follows their mother, which is a pretty interesting and mysterious figure in this book. And I don't know how I feel about this because I usually am not into mystery series. I'm saying this, but at the same time I'm reading The Good Girl's Guide to Murder sequel. Still, usually I'm not into them, but I think this book managed to build the world very well and left a few questions unanswered, and these questions are itching inside my skull. So I'm very interested to see what else Karin Slaughter can do with these characters. My nonfiction pick of those 2 months was Disfigured on Fairy Tales, Disability and Making Space by Amanda Leduc. It's just a collection of thoughts and essays of Amanda Leduc on disability in media, mostly in fairy tales. It's about the disabled villains in fairy tales, which is a topic that I think a lot of people are familiar with at this point, but she also touches upon some disabled heroes and their arcs in fairy tales, and how often at the end they're either cured or they get their happy ending because of their individual resilience and not because of the collective help of other people that care for them, which to me was the most enlightening thing about this book. I don't think I actually read it, the novel, because I usually don't read nonfiction unless it really wows me. Sometimes this book takes a very leftist approach, which as a centrist I'm not a big fan of. I think this book is a very basic introduction to disability justice. If you're interested in the topic, pick it up, read it. It's a decent audiobook as well. Then I read The Delightful Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake, and I absolutely loved it, and I've been seeing a lot of people hyping it up and saying that they've read it and loved it as well, and it makes me very happy. I hope Ashley Herring Blake is going to have a good and a long career in the romance community, because she managed to write one of my favorite FF romances, and I've read quite a few of them. I think that she is a very talented person in general. I read her other books, but also this book is just perfectly balanced. It has some drama, it has some humor, it has a very electric romance, and it's just very lovely. The story follows Delilah that is in her late 20s. She moved from a small town to New York City to become a photographer. She, as many other artists, are struggling and is kind of at the dead end, so she agrees to come back to her small town to be the photographer at the wedding of her stepsister. She doesn't have a good relationship with her stepfamily. Her father died 2 years into the marriage with her stepmother, and she never managed to make a connection, so their relationship was always tense. A little does she know, her stepsister Astrid wants to reconcile. She wants to build a relationship with Delilah, and inviting her as a photographer was a part of the big plan. When Delilah comes back, she re-meets the people that she spent her childhood with, and is shocked by her attraction to Claire, who's one of the best friends of her stepsister. Claire is a whole different woman now. She has a teenage daughter, she has a business to run, and she's smoking hot. Delilah is not one for long-term relationships, and she hopes that the growing attraction to Claire is not going to require any obligations from her, but of course, since it's a romance, she's gravely mistaken. This was the perfect small-town romance. It had enough familial drama to keep it together. It had enough humor and chemistry between the leads to make it incredibly charming. I also loved Claire's storyline a lot. As a single mom, she had to figure out how to find time for romance in her already busy schedule, and also had to untangle the difficult relationship that she has with her flaky baby daddy. I loved the story. If you have not read it yet, I highly recommend it. I also finally picked up Hard Sell by Hudson Lee. This is gonna be a mouthful. It's brother's best friend romance. One of the heroes is Danny. He's an analytic for an investment company that buys IT startups. Danny is fully dedicated to his job, and in the past few years he lost his credibility because he stopped bringing big projects to the company. So he's overzealous with this new IT startup that he believes is going to be a gold mine. He doesn't know what a surprise awaits him, because when he's introduced to the employees of the company, he sees a very familiar face, the little brother of his best friend with whom he has undeniable chemistry and with whom he had a one-night stand once that they decided to move on from. But since they met again and have to work together, they feel that they can no longer deny this chemistry, and it becomes harder and harder to resist it. The story is just very well done. It has enough familial angst and drama to add a little bit of spice. It has enough of a subplot to keep the story together, to make it a bit more rich and interesting. And also Hudson Lee is really good at writing chemistry that you believe in. She's really good specifically at writing attraction. Right away, after a few chapters, you just start rooting for these characters hardcore. And it really feels like there's no other option. If they're not gonna be together, they're gonna be miserable because they are the people for each other. She's just really good at that. I recommend to pick up this book if you're looking for a new romance to read, because it was excellent. I really enjoyed it. And I actually am going to read the second book because I'm interested in the character that is set up as a hero. I believe he's set up as a hero. He's just very sarcastic and I love that. You'll be very surprised if you're a long-time viewer, because I actually own a physical copy of the book that I'm going to talk about next. It's The Devil of the Highlands by Lindsay Sands. And it started strong. I'm not going to lie, going into Lindsay Sands, I knew about her reputation. I knew that a lot of her characters are not right, so to speak, and I was prepared for that. And it worked for me for maybe 5 to 10 chapters, but then it became very tedious. So pick up this book at your own discretion. The story follows Evelyn. She lives with an evil stepmother. It's like out of a fairy tale. She really is grotesquely evil. She wants to marry her off to Cullen, who is the laird of one of the clans and who has a reputation of a brute and a sadist who killed not only his father and I think uncle, but also his wife. So Evelyn obviously is not particularly just about the idea. The guy turns out to be pretty decent and the rumors about him are all fake. They meet in very peculiar circumstances. It's almost as if you're watching a Mr. Bean film, but it's a romance. You'll get what I mean, just let me set the scene. So Evelyn, pissed off by the news, goes to the river to ride her horse, and she falls down into the water. So to dry her clothing, she decides to undress and to ride the horse holding the clothing. The wind in this case will work as a fan, and she's going to get her results pretty quickly. The logic is logicking, but also is not logicking at the same time, because why would you do that? It just sounds completely insane. She rides her horse basically in her nightie, alone in the forest near the lake, and she's basically soaked through, which makes her nightgown practically useless because it's transparent. And in the same moment, Cullen comes to collect his wife. He encounters her at the river and sees this peculiar picture. She falls again, now from the horse, and Cullen hurries to help her, but he ends up with her boob in his mouth. If that's not the most ridiculous fucking thing that you've ever heard about, the screenwriters of badly written porn are shaking their boots from jealousy, because that's clearly genius. He can't contain himself and they participate in some heavy petting and only later figure out that they actually are supposed to marry each other. And this book is full of these kinds of shenanigans, which are fucking stupid, and I kind of lived for them at first. But then, when these characters actually had to use their brain for investigation, and they didn't have much brain cells to spare, it became very dull very quickly, because you, as a reader, already knew how things are going to turn out, but these characters were too dumb to realize it. So that was a journey. I gotta say that that was a journey. But if you're looking for something stupid to read, be my guest. I give it 3 stars for clear genius comedic timing. And finally, we're getting from bad to worse, the flop of the video. The floppiest flop ever. Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. If you like this book, I simply do not understand why. I do not get it. Conversations with Friends is a boring piece of shit. And I never allow myself to speak like that about books because taste is just very subjective. But if you like this book, I'm not going to continue. But if you like this book, I just simply do not understand you. It's boring, it's too long, and it lacks a clear message. It is supposed to be a character-driven book, but the characters are bland as a piece of a soggy, unbuttered toast. This book actively took years out of my life. I suffered when I was reading it, and the worst part about the experience is I actually vlogged it, and some of the footage got lost, including the audio, which was just a cherry on top of the shitty cake because even the video didn't turn out good. Reading this book was just a terrible experience altogether. It follows a young woman named Frances. She's in her early 20s. She is a feminist, a communist, and an altogether progressive type of girl. Her friend and at the same time ex-lover write and read poetry. They both don't have normal jobs that actually are valuable for the society. So the communist detail was especially scathing. I know that Sally Rooney is leftist herself, so by writing these characters as communists, I don't think she represented her views very well. Ironically, these two morally superior individuals meet up with a married couple. The wife wants to take an interview about their poetry. Frances finds that she's very attracted to the husband and tries to justify her illicit affair with him by constantly telling herself that the wife is terrible and cheated on him in the past too. This was a train wreck of a novel, not because all the people in it are horrible and unlikable. I do love an unlikable character. They can be terrible people, but they also have to be interesting. These people were so incredibly dull that I found listening to the audiobook a chore. So I was doing double the chores while listening to the Conversations with Friends. My major problem with this book is that it's sold as a character study, as a character-driven story, but these characters never change in any way, and they don't really have an arc. Their arc is a straight line. Make them better, make them worse, make them something. Just do something with them. I do not recommend it to anyone unless you are a masochist and you want to torture yourself. I'm not going to watch the TV show even though I have it on my streaming service because I simply do value my time. And in general, I love myself too much to put myself through this. And I also want to add that while most of the cast of this book is queer, this is the straightest shit I've ever read. The straightest shit ever. In May, I also finally finished reading the 4th book in the Vampire Academy series, Blood Promise. I didn't really like this book as much as I liked the 3rd book in the series, which was a surprise because I thought at the end of the first part of the series that the things are picking up and I'm going to enjoy it more. But a lot of this book was filler. I think maybe the series was not meant to be 6 books and was meant to be maybe 4 or 5. And Rachel Mead had to figure out a way how to add some length to it. So that's why some subplots were introduced. I think how the storylines did not exist at the conception of the series at all. It's very clear that some ideas were introduced later because they were convenient. I'm going to reveal my full thoughts and analyze this book in a separate video. If you have not seen the first part of my Vampire Academy deep dive. You can always check it out. I'm going to leave the link here somewhere. Blood Promise could have been shorter and tighter and more effective. I just hope that the fifth book is better. And the last book that I'm going to talk about is The Maid by Nita Prose. I wasn't planning to read this book actually. I know that it was pretty hyped up. It's a 2022 release, but I wasn't particularly interested in it. I usually pick up mysteries and thrillers on a whim, which is what I did with this book. It just dropped on Scribd and I was looking for a new audiobook to listen to. I think that this book does a lot of interesting new things with expected and well-known narratives. The story follows Molly, a maid that works in a prestigious hotel. She is autistic and she often doesn't understand when people make fun of her. She doesn't have many friends and she really likes her job. She's very diligent and very organized. She becomes the first person that finds a body of a tycoon in one of their rooms. She becomes the person of interest in this case. Because she clearly is innocent and is being framed for murder, she starts investigating the case herself. Now, I've seen some reviews which I consider distasteful that called Molly unbelievably naive. I have to disagree with them because I found the story interestingly refreshing. We get an unreliable narrator that doesn't have mental health issues and isn't a substance user. We saw things through Molly's point of view and we understood them differently that she did because of the blind spots that she has. I really enjoyed this. Even though the story is nothing special, it's not incredibly original, the mystery part of it, and it's very clearly built up in front of you, but the protagonist gave the story a new angle. I give this 4 stars. I was not particularly into the twist at the end. I think it was cheap. But overall, I found the story incredibly engrossing, and in my opinion, Molly was very charming. I'm still trying to make media recommendations at the end of each of my videos a tradition. I often forget about it, but we're trying here. We're not always working at our highest brain capacity. Today, I remembered and I actually wrote down what I wanted to recommend to you. The TV show that I want to recommend to you is Our Flag Means Death. A lot of people had seen it already. It is a delightful romp about a group of not very good pirates and a man that leads them, that left behind his title and his family because he always wanted to be a big scary pirate. The story has a very fun satirical package, but it frankly talks about toxic masculinity and class difference, and it also has a really sweet and lovely gay romance that was unexpected and for that even more welcome. I highly recommend to check out the first few episodes. I can promise you that you're gonna get hooked and you're going to binge watch the whole series. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. In the comments down below, tell me what you read recently. If you have any media recommendations for me, leave them as well. And on that note, I will see you with another video, but until then,